Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, and I want to do a little bit of a deck retrospective of my Akachi and Ursula decks that I just took through the Feast of Hemlock Vale here on the channel. And I'm not going to give too many spoilers about how things went, but I will talk through the beginning of the deck and the end of the deck. We're looking at the level 0 version here of Akachi, and we'll see very shortly where she ended up at the end of 6 scenarios. 6 scenarios is pretty short, but that, of course, is Feast of Hemlock Vale. It's kind of 6 or 7, depending on how you want to count. So there weren't too many times I got to upgrade. But it was worth putting arcane research in. So I'm going to talk about Akachi first, who was kind of our main fighter, of course, with Ursula, who gets clues really well. No reason for Akachi to get too many clues, but we did have 2 copies of Rite of Seeking here, which is, to me, almost an auto-include in most Mystics. However, there's another reason why I wanted to include it and Shriveling in this deck, because I was a Dragon Pull deck that also made use of some cool upgrades in terms of the accessory slots. So, in particular, the downside here of Rite of Seeking and Shriveling is kind of bad. When you reveal one of those symbol tokens, right, you end up taking Horror, and I did upgrade, as you'll see, to a level 5 Shriveling, and that's pretty tough taking 2 Horror. The Rite of Seeking one is you may end your turn, which I don't feel like is that big of a deal. You can usually play around this. However, my intention here was to upgrade into, as you'll see right now, nope, that's Ursula, sorry, here, into the Empty Vessel, which Akachi can take. And this, you can't see it on here. I guess we'll go to the card page. This allows you to, when you get the bonded card, when you reveal one of those tokens, not the autofail, of course, but the other symbol tokens, you get to cancel the chaos token. So the modifier is no modifier, just 0. And then heal a damage and a horror, which is crazy. And the way to power this up, of course, is to be attacking enemies. So if you defeat an enemy, you get to place a charge on it. Akachi gets this because she gets cards with charges, and killing enemies just charges up even further. And with Akachi's ability, you get to start with 1 charge on it already. So you only need to kill 2 things, and then you start switching it over to heal damage and horror. We ended up having a lot of trauma in this campaign, so it was really good to have this for sure. So going back to the level 0, that was kind of the purpose of having those cards. And like I said, getting clues I think is still important if you are not even the main clue person. And it was really good for Akachi to run around and clear off a few locations by herself, even if I didn't actually go through all of those charges. Now, this worked out really well. The alchemical transmutation was here also to try to power up the dragon pole, and it's a bad card. I thought about upgrading it, and then I just got rid of them altogether because my economy was solved by other things, and I had plenty of other things to throw into the arcane slots eventually. So those went away. It's a dragon pole deck, and I was very fortunate that I always got the dragon pole. One thing that you worry about with these kinds of combo decks, especially in 2-player, is what if you don't draw it? And I think with a combination of the preludes, as well as some pretty good card draw in this deck, it was not a problem. So I believe it was out fairly early in all the scenarios. So this was a great thing to use along with upgrading the Living Ink, which I, at the beginning, added combat to this. So I was fighting at a base of 3, sometimes 4, 5, with, of course, the Living Ink eventually went into the arcane slot itself. And yeah, it was just a great addition here. So I think Akachi's deck turned out extremely went extremely smoothly. There were a few times in the scenarios where I didn't feel like she had everything out at once, but you can see here with the upgrades, we got a lot of XP. This is 57 XP, which is absolutely insane, right? I know that's 14, 12, I think, with the arcane research basically built in, but still we got a lot. So we can just sort of talk about the differences between this and the level 0. I obviously dumped some things, upgraded other things. Living Ink got I guess not all, 8 XP into it. We added willpower to it. We had the after you reveal chaos token of the symbol, place a charge on it. Obviously, that's some anti-synergy with the empty vessel, but of course, you're not going to draw symbols all the time that you want to cancel or need to cancel, and this didn't really run out too often anyway, starting with 6 charges in play. So this is a really good card. If you haven't played with it, having it take up an arcane slot with Dragon Pole is really, really nice. And it costs nothing, right? Now, one thing I will say about Akachi, as you may have noticed here, at the very end of the campaign, I ran out of spell assets to move charges from to her Angered Spirits. So Living Ink is not a spell, it's a ritual. So you cannot use this with Akachi's weakness. In fact, all I had at the end were Shrivelings, Rite of Seeking, Suggestion I added in the last scenario, I never used it. But there's not enough here really to use for her weakness, and I just said, it doesn't matter. We're just gonna take the trauma. Because things like Talisman of Protection and the Empty Vessel, which I also got out in pretty much every scenario, really saved me from dying. This healing that is actionless is absolutely incredible, and this card is probably good in everyone. It's really good in Akachi, but I recommend trying this out in other Guardians if you have any sort of way of defeating enemies, which is a lot of Guardians, right? It's really good. Decorated Skull, I added 2 of these, and I think it's really good. I don't think I ever had spare actions to just take this action and draw all the cards and resources. But for and it's 3 XP. But for 3 XP to have a one-time 3 resources, 3 cards, which is basically how I used it, I still think it's worth it. Maybe not 2 copies, but it also is cheap, right? You just put it down. I was also there to power up the Close the Circle. I had usually 4 or 5 charges on this. So this is the extra actions I'm looking for, right? I think I added this too late in the campaign, and I wish having full 8 scenarios would have let me use more of these cards more often. But I think this card is extremely underrated, and especially in this Akachi Dragon Pole deck made a lot of sense because I really wanted to be able to use charges, right, on an extra action, because sometimes you're just like, I need to move, and moving is a basic action. Playing a card is a basic action. The Decorated Skull thing is a basic action. And I kind of forgot about the willpower replacement, I think, in a few scenarios. And that would have made this even better because I basically had like a base of 5 or 6 all the time. So even just to get a single clue, I probably should have been using it more often for that. I did upgrade the Rite of Seeking, by the way, to level 2, and I did use it. I don't think I needed 2 of these. I think 1 was perfectly fine, and I think it's important to have some clue getting. This is basically the deck. Strangely, I didn't really do much with allies. You can see I kind of went down to 1 of David, 1 of Arcane Initiate. I didn't need them. Like, the Empty Vessel healed so much that, yeah, the Arcane Initiate to draw is kind of okay, but like the Decorated Skull could do it too. Ursula could help. I did get the Hierophant in at the very end, and this also allowed me to have all this stuff out. I did have a Relic Hunter as well, so I think I had basically up to 4 arcane slots, but if I wanted to have other things out, so basically it's made it easier to fill the arcane slots, right? If I had the Empty Vessel or Decorated Skull, those could slot in, but then they could move over to the accessory slots once I had other things to play. So yeah, rest of stuff is pretty bog standard. Guts, Fearless, pretty much the same as the initial deck. Overzealous was my basic weakness, and it was fine. Sometimes it's a problem, but not really for Akachi. She doesn't mind drawing counter cards. Her stat line's great, right? 5-2, 3-3. She's got 1 more than usual. The 3 agility was surprisingly useful, like passing a few tests that were 2 or 3. The 3 combat, again, I'm making use of here with the Living Ink and other allies I picked up. So I was passing combat tests in the Mythos phase as well. So I like being able to use all the stats, honestly. All right, so that's Akachi. Let's go ahead and take a look at Ursula now. I think you saw um, her level 0 briefly earlier, and she ended up with Chronophobia. Not a big deal for her weakness, but this was a deck where I started within the thick of it and wanted to just immediately go into these Ancient Stones, and I also wanted to upgrade this Ravenous Miket. I think the Preludes were a good time to do this because you're not under so much pressure. I mean, it's actions that you're probably trying to use to do other things, but Ursula, with her ability to move and take an investigate action, kind of gets you back some of that time. I'd never played with, honestly, I'd never played with the Ancient Stones before, and I upgraded them into the Healing Horror and the Movement ones. I think the damage one is a little too silly for me. I didn't think it was necessary anyway. However, I did upgrade the Ravenous Myconid into the defeating an enemy one, and we'll talk about that in a second about what I what I thought of that card. But this was otherwise trying to be pretty standard events crystallizer deck. So the Crystallizer of Dreams, if you're not familiar, after you play an event, you need to attach it to this card face down, and then you can use the events again, basically as skill cards to commit to skill tests and get those bonuses essentially a second time. It powers up Witten Green, who I didn't actually see as much as I had thought. I got rid of the Tooth of Etzli pretty early. I don't think I ever played it, but 10 events, and they're all kind of interesting. I mean, the Burning the Midnight Oil and Cryptic Writings are standard cards for this sort of thing. The Vantage Point is sort of a silly card for Ursula to, after you move, then you get to move a clue into that location. It gets a -1 Shroud. You can immediately put on the Crystallizer. But I don't think the card's that good. I don't think I ever pulled off anything that was that important, but it could be because of the scenarios and the campaign that I played, where moving the clues around wasn't that important. In fact, it was better to get clues off of locations rather than to add additional one. And the -1 Shroud is not that cool, but this got replaced. Now, the other cards from Hemlock Vale that are in this set are kind of interesting. So Thorough Inquiry, no image here yet, but you basically spend 2 actions. Again, I feel like Ursula has the extra action to make this okay. And then you get to draw 5 cards for 2 cost. Is pretty good. Testing Sprint, 1 cost. Again, 2 actions, but one of those actions can be her take an investigate action, right? So she kind of is only spending 1 on this, sort of. And you get to 1 at a time investigate your location and every connecting one once each in ascending order Shroud until you fail. This sounds like a bad card. And I think it's extremely scenario dependent because you need to reveal enough locations. You need to be able to take clues off of connecting locations. There's one scenario in this campaign, Feast of Hemlock Vale, where you actually can't do this, which was extremely annoying. I was very sad. However, there are some other good spots where if you can pull this off, it's really good. I won't say anything else, but I don't think this is a bad card. I think it's probably better in higher player counts, but actually kind of made it work. Ursula was a blast to play. What a fun investigator, honestly. So the ally package, we have Jake Williams, we've got Lab Assistant and Witten Green. Originally, I thought maybe this is a big hand deck and we can play these events for free with Farsight. I didn't go down that route. I wanted to spend my XP doing other things, I think, first, and then I just said, you know what, I think I am doing enough. I don't need to get the Farsight into this deck. So the Lab Assistant eventually went, and let's take a look at the level 40-something deck. 48 experience, Jesus. Okay, well, Crafty is such a good card. You may have noticed that there was a lot of insights in this event package. So not only can you pay for them with Crafty, but you can boost the skill tests. So I went up to a couple of other events that we didn't see before. So Confound, I suppose, is an insight, and it's a trick too, for that matter. And this allows you to automatically evade an enemy, and it won't, not only enemy, and it won't ready, and then you get 2 clues at your location also. I guess you need to get the clues And if there aren't clues, then you actually don't evade the enemy. But anyway, the cost 2, so you can reduce the cost by 2 or put the crafty resources into the test itself. So it's a good card. It's expensive though, so in terms of XP, so I didn't get 2 of them. I actually replaced one of the testing sprints, I guess, with it or something like that, but I actually now feel like I should have kept 2 testing sprints. The icons here are pretty good. Again, all of these things are for the Crystallizer too, which I think underperformed in a good chunk of scenarios, but then once I really started to play the events more, it was really good. So I'm really conflicted about Crystallizer Dreams. The enemy is not a big deal. It never was. However, it doesn't do anything for you except for power up Wit and Green. It's cheap. Until you are basically playing a lot of events. And I wasn't really doing that as much as I should have until the last scenario or so. It could just be because I wasn't either drawing enough cards or I didn't need to play these events because I think these other things that she had going on for her were really good. But that's just been my experience with this card. And you can tell me how you've played Crystallizer in Ursula. If you maybe I should have had more events or what, but I couldn't give up on these assets. I love assets. Assets are good. And I had some fun ones. So beyond, I guess No Stone Unturned is here too. Did I use this? I think I did. And Unearth the Ancients also to put my assets into play has some great icons too to put onto the Crystallizer, and you get the clue out of this. What a great upgrade. Level 0 is kind of bad, but level 2 is incredible. Also an insight, right? Right? Yeah. Okay. The allies, I mean, there's Rosa, who, if you haven't played the campaign, you don't know anything about. I don't think I ever played Jake. I think he showed up in my hand, but there was always a different ally to play instead. So let's go over the other assets. Like I said, I got the Horror Healing Stone, and these came in with 7 secrets, and the Movement Stone. And I think these cards are incredible. They are really, really good because they are actionless healing, which I made use of quite a bit, and actionless moving. So I was able to, I think at least a few times, draw a card in upkeep and then investigate because I hadn't done my once per round investigate. So that's like almost 2 extra actions every round. I also sometimes just drew a card to move, and that kind of is still positive. If I had 2 of these, I probably didn't need 2 of these. I think having 1 of each was good enough, but I didn't always plan about how to use these secrets in the best way, and that's somewhat of a playing two-handed. There's just too many things to pay attention to, but these cards overperform, in my opinion. They're not as crazy as the damage one, I think, because it can deal damage to elite enemies. But the fact that this heals horror from any card at your location, including Akachi, is really good. So, you know, healing 7 horror actionlessly is really good. I also stuck in the Chthonian Stone level 3 at the end of the playthrough, and I think this is a fine card. It doesn't do anything too special, but it's cheap. I wasn't using my hand slots for anything but the other relics, so I just decided to put it in here. I don't think I ever removed any charges. I didn't get any auto fails off, but it's a nice card. Surgical Kit. This is a tool, so Crafty pays for it. I didn't extensively use this card. I usually played it for the damage healing because we had horror healing on tap, but often just spending 2 actions to heal 3 from Akachi in particular was really good. There's a lot of direct damage in this particular campaign, and I think this is a good card. It's probably one that, I mean, it doesn't take up any slots either, right? I didn't use it more than once per scenario, but honestly, 3 XP, 2 actions, 0 cost, well, 3 actions, I guess, still, to me, was worth it. All right, the Ravenous Miket. This is the carnivorous strain. There's no picture here, but essentially you get this uncanny growth card, which is an insight. By the way, that's really why I have Crafty. You use it as an event. It doesn't go onto the crystallizer or anything, but you play it, you try to over succeed, and for the amount that you over succeed, you put tokens onto this card. That's the amount of growth. Then, if the amount of growth that's on this card is equal to, or more than, I guess, the remaining health of a non-elite enemy at your location, no action, you just defeat the enemy. This part isn't even more, once per round. All right, is this card busted? I felt like in this campaign, and maybe it's 2-player, maybe I wasn't bringing the strongest investigators, I felt like this was necessary. I did not actually see it or use it in every scenario. But when it showed up, I did make use of it because often Ursula was already busy. Sorry, Akachi was already busy, and Ursula needed to just get rid of something. There's a few enemies that happen to pop up, then you predictably know when they're going to come, and you know how much health they have, so you can kind of save up to just deal with them. It is 4 XP. It is 1 card in your deck. I don't think it's as crazy as the Ancient Stones, because you can have 2 of those. You can have tons of secrets on those, and it can deal damage to elites. This can't, but it doesn't take an action to use. I mean, it takes an action to investigate, but you're doing that anyway. I mean, it's really strong. It's one of the strongest cards. But I don't feel too guilty about it in this campaign because I still had a very difficult time with this campaign. And having this around was not always that easy to use either. Like, I either ran out of resources or I wasn't succeeding by enough, which just sometimes happens with token pulls, right? And sometimes I was using it without even clues on locations because I needed the ability that bad. So yes, Seekers don't have fast defeat enemy too often, right? But at the moment, I don't feel too bad about it. I think it's probably a little bit unfair, but not so much that I think it needs a taboo. I get that you can do some crazy things with it. If you're really going all into it, it should be easy to over succeed on every single time. But that's probably true of like 3 and 4-player games more than 2-player or 1-player. That's just my opinion there. I do think that it's a very, very strong card, but sometimes you kind of need this effect because there's a lot of enemies in this campaign. One last thing before I go. Strangely, this card, Ursula's Weakness, called the Unknown, which forces you to investigate locations other than your own every turn until you fail to do so, and then you take 2 horror and shove it back in. I think I saw this one time. I got lucky. It's possible I saw it twice, but it was not something I ever had to deal with, and that's kind of why I was like, oh, I need horror healing. I got the chronophobia. I've got, Call the Unknown, but this actually was never a problem. I wasn't drawing through my deck, right? You can play that way. You can draw every card multiple times in your Seeker decks. I didn't feel like I had the time for it, and I was finishing scenarios faster anyways. So I like Ursula. Ursula is a good investigator. Like the 7/7 split, the 3 willpower, even bumping that up with Wit and Green, the Mouse Mask. This deck was a lot of fun. Did everything that I was expecting it to do. Nothing really underperformed. I do like to learn things when I play the game, and what is it that I didn't know before? It's probably that some of these new cards, like Testing Sprint, Thorough Inquiry for sure. Thorough Inquiry is, I think, already known to be really good. That wild symbol is crazy. But Ursula can do a lot, even though there's, so the evasion, right? She's got 4, you get 5 with Hiking Boots, a little bit more with other cards. But what do you do with that, with the secret card pool? Honestly, it's just survive. those are good stats to have for the Mythos phase, and evading enemies was definitely something worth doing. So I'm so pleased with this deck. I think Ursula is a great investigator, and it was a lot of fun to play, especially 2-player. When I go back and look at Akachi, here, level 57 deck, again, the big thing that I learned here was the Dragon Pole deck is pretty consistent. There's a lot of support now, especially with Living Ink. Close the Circle, I really should have played more often and a little more aggressively, but this Empty Vessel is fantastic. I've never really played with it before, seriously, and it solves so many problems. So I recommend it. The rest of it is like good Mystic stuff, but I do feel like the deck is a little bit more interesting. Oh, one other thing. Shriveling level 5. Usually it doesn't feel necessary to upgrade to level 5 in 2-player, but dealing the 3 damage was actually really important. And I realized halfway through the campaign that this actually was a priority. So this don't sleep on this card as, being expensive and have this blowback here. You can just, at least in Akachi, deal with that in some other ways. So all right, that's it for this video. I will be playing another campaign very soon on the channel, and I think I'm going to take a stab at True Solo. So look for that probably next week.